Unison is brought to you by the Young Committee of the International Federation for Choral Music.
The choral music of Darius Lim has inspired thousands of singers across the world. His music has been presented on some of the world's biggest international platforms. Dr. Lim's most popular work, The Fire Dance of Luna, which sold more than 35,000 copies, has garnered critical acclaim and has won top prizes by choirs in international and national competitions around the world. His treble voice work, The Puppet's Dream, has also been presented the Discovery of the Month by legendary composer John Rutter. With a strong belief in instilling lifelong appreciation for choral music and promoting Singaporean music, he has carved a reputation as an advocate of choral music whose choirs and works inspire, educate, engage, and entertain audiences around the world. And so we're so glad that you're here with us, Dr. Lim.
Thanks for having me.
So the first question that we have for you is kind of how you got started as a young conductor and composer.
Right. Well, I started out in music school when I was 17, and it's been a long journey. I started out as a piano major, and I was singing in choir since I was a child. But piano has always been my first love, and it's been a source of passion. It's been my greatest passion, as well as my biggest form of expression for many, many years until I was 25. And starting out was the most difficult because it was the transition from being a pianist to a conductor. So I started teaching in school choirs and went on to community groups in Singapore. And it was a really interesting journey trying to learn and the traits of different pedagogical methods from different conductors in Singapore. And that sort of was history. And at 25, I started my first choir, community group, and also my first school choir. And that sort of led on to many, many other things that I did in my life.
Wow, that's so cool. From piano to suddenly choir.
Mhm.
I feel like it's a common like shift, I think, for some conductors.
Yeah.
Could you talk us through like the choral traditions of your region in Singapore and what makes choirs in Singapore unique?
Right. So where I come from, Singapore is in Southeast Asia. It's a really interesting place to be because I would call it it's the place where choral singing is growing, is thriving, and a lot of the countries, our neighbors, from in Malaysia to Indonesia to the Philippines, they are choral hubs, in Southeast Asia, and they have some of the most amazing choirs. A lot of the music that we do is folk based, based on our culture and based on stories of our ancestors. And I think in the recent few decades, in the last 2 to 3 decades, our choral scene in Southeast Asia has taken a very interesting turn towards competitions, and using competitions as a stage of choral excellence, as well as advocating, bringing communities together and really using that as a platform to advocate excellence and building different communities. So in Singapore, we don't exactly um, focus as much in competitions as much as our neighbors in the region. But a lot of the music that we make in Singapore right now is based on inclusivity, as well as the notion of the Singaporean identity and the multiracial identity that Singapore has. And so that's really interesting in terms of the choral music making that we make in Singapore.
Yeah, I think it's great to learn from others, and especially as a young person interested in the conducting profession, I think there's many things to learn about different regions around the world and how they benefit one another. And I think that it's wonderful what's happening in that region, even with um, competitions and such. I think there's much to be learned from that. And so, my next question are, what do you believe are some of the benefits and challenges of being a young conductor and composer?
Hmm. Well, I think um, the biggest challenge, maybe we talk about the challenge first, because um, it's really about getting your music there. You know, if you're a composer, it's really about building a choir that you are personally satisfied and happy with. Um, and a lot of the times, the trend that I see in the world right now is the want and the passion to want to get there, to want to arrive, and to have a great choir or to have your music sung by people from all over the world. I think the challenge with this vision is the ability to enjoy the process of what it takes to get there. And a lot of the time, we don't really understand the joy and the beauty of growing something out of nothing. And I think, when I look back 15, 20 years down when I first started in writing music and conducting choirs, it's a really interesting journey because I knew what I wanted to become, but I did not understand clearly what it took to become what I wanted to become. So I think that's the biggest challenge, to understand that every journey is a process, and a process that one has to enjoy, and to also seek advice from people whom you respect in the choral world. I think that's the most important thing, to always be open-minded to the people, and to seek advice from the people that you really respect.
Truly inspiring, and especially for me and Reese, who are starting our
Yeah.
careers this early as well. Could you tell us more about Voices of Singapore?
Well, Voices of Singapore was we started about 6 years ago, and it's a very young organization. I started Voices of Singapore in 2017, 2018, with that notion of bringing people from all walks of life together. And as I mentioned, the challenge was starting something out of nothing, and in Singapore. Um, Choral singing is not exactly the music of our people. It's really something that is very active in schools, but not so much in communities. And Voices of Singapore was created to serve the purpose of bringing different communities together and serving those communities. So today we started today in 2017 we started with about 80 people in two different choirs, and today we have about 31 choirs and 1,300 singers from all walks of life. We have children's choirs and adult choruses, professional groups, as well as um, amateur groups. And we also have what we call the community impact choirs, where we have choirs that serve the underprivileged, including seniors with dementia and children with special needs, as well as children at risk who are in homes. So it's a really big organization today, and we have our own space and our own concert halls in the heart of Singapore, that promote singing as a means of uniting people and different communities together. So it's been 6 years of joy and lots of tears, as well as we actually started um, shortly before the pandemic happened. So it's been an uphill battle, but it's also been a dream come true for us to see how Voices of Singapore has built and contributed to building the Singing Singapore.
That's wonderful. I often talk about how being a choral conductor is also being a business manager and
Mhm.
also managing a bunch of different things at once. And so 30 plus ensembles can be quite a challenge.
Yeah.
So you are very active in the choral community, and I'm curious how you balance different leadership obligations, musicianship, and also being a human, being your personal life as well.
That's a really long conversation. I'm gonna try and digest everything. Okay, so in a nutshell, I run three companies right now. I run a charity. So the charity is Voices of Singapore. I run a for-profit music school, which is Voice Company, and that focuses on solo voice singing. We have some of the best voice teachers in Singapore. And the last one, of course, is it's my company that sells my music, Darius Music. So all these need management. I think, like you said, Reese, the biggest challenge is managing people and managing your own time. Um, so I have a very strict timetable every day. I really have meetings, about 5 to 6 meetings, sometimes 7 meetings a day, and I have rehearsals every evening. So it's my belief is not in the work that I do, but in the work that I delegate to do. So I believe in hiring really good staff. A lot of the staff that I hire are first class honors graduates from either music schools or business schools. We currently have 28 staff in Voices of Singapore and 18 conductors. So although we have 31 choirs, I actually only conduct 3 choirs. And 3 of the choirs that I'm passionate to build. And the rest, I use the time in office to build and train conductors, to spread and knowledge, and to also give opportunity to the younger generation of conductors who are aspiring. So we do have a lot of people visiting even from the US and UK on internships to teach our choirs, to gain exposure, for 3 months. We had a singer as well who was singing in cantus, who was attached to us for 3 months to conduct our choirs and sing and do solo work. And so, I go by a really strict timetable, and, compartmentalizing everything is really the biggest skill that you can have when you're doing so much and you have so much going on every single day. Um, if there is a week 5 of a month, if there's a fifth week of a month, I usually take the entire week off and I fly somewhere to write music, and that's really my rule in terms of having a balanced artistic life as well. I do travel a lot, and in the midst of my traveling, um, I work when I'm traveling, and I also travel uh, with extra days to for rest and relaxation and R&R and so on. So it's a very I would say it's a very disciplined life that requires a lot of balancing of your time. Mhm.
Wow, that's so amazing. Write that down, Reese. We need to take note of that. Those tips. Really cool.
Enjoying the podcast? Why not check out what else IFCM is up to? Follow IFCM on Instagram or Facebook, or visit ifcm.net to hear about upcoming events and projects, and to find a vast array of choral music resources.
Speaking about composition, I think your compositions are so fire. So, where do
Yeah.
you find inspiration for your compositions? And can you talk us through your process when working on a composition?
Yeah. Well, most of my music can be quite polarizing. It's either sacred Latin text music, or it's fantasy choral music for children and youth. And a lot of my music is inspired by my travels, by places that I've been to. Um, and by experiences, that give me some sense of heightened emotion. And I think a lot of imagery is used in the way I write my music and the way I write the text. I believe in music that is singable and that has melodies that people remember. I am a huge fan of music that can be played on repeat. And I think, that's my belief that if you enjoy music, you would play them on repeat and you would really want to enjoy them and listen to them over and over again. So I try to write melodies that I resonate with, but at the same time that the people might listen to and enjoy. So it's you would say it's more accessible in that way. And a lot of the process that I take, it really depends on the type, the moment. The fastest song I've ever written was 10 minutes, and I written the text and the music together in 7 parts. And that was yeah, such a it was just it just went by like that, in 10 minutes. I think it was 12 minutes, and I was so shocked, at surprised at myself. But the longest work that I've written actually took a year and a half. And that was a 7-minute work, uh, Echoes of the Lost World, and that was a commission for the Hong Kong Children's Choir, and I had to trash things over and over again. So it really depends on the type of music, and sometimes the level of inspiration. Especially now, recently in the past 2 years, I haven't been writing as much as I would like to, because of the immense amount of work in the different companies. But the process for me is usually, for sacred music, is text first and then setting the music to text. But for my fantasy music, is really about the melody, and the melody first, and the concept of what I want the children to do, whether it's theatrical or it's the idea of what I want to present. And it's an interesting way that is debatable, and I'm sure I'll be met with a lot of contention on on text first or music first. But that's the way I've always pictured music for children, that it has to excite children first, and be accessible to children, and children have to remember singing that. So usually it's the melody first and the storyline first. Yeah.
I think that's great. And thinking about the audience is so, so important.
Mhm.
So I think that's why a lot of people appreciate your works, is because they can feel the inspiration behind them, and they're really taken into a new world. And I think that's really, really awesome.
Mhm. Thank you.
Uh, the next question that I have is going back to talking about young people in this choral space. And I'm curious if you have any advice for a developing conductor. What would you say? How would you encourage them to learn and grow?
Mm, it's a good question. I think for a budding conductor or composer who is starting out, the most important thing is to be open with the possibilities. When I was younger, I jumped on every single opportunity, no matter how small, that I had, and I made sure that the connections that I made through these small opportunities were meaningful ones. I never ever looked down on anyone, whether they were older or younger, and I always tried my best to make meaningful conversations with people. I was very open to uh, comments on my music, my conducting, and I think that brought me new ideas of what I wanted to do and what I did not want to be. So a lot of these experiences when I was younger sort of molded the person that I am today. Um, and I have these 2 words that I hold very dearly to myself, and those 2 words are look beyond. Look beyond what you can see right in front of you. It might be a situation that you are presented with that you might not be happy with. It might be music that you are not happy with. It might be a situation that you are in that you are not. You just feel like you are not deserving, and many a times there are moments where I felt like giving up, but look beyond what is in front of you and see the bigger picture of what you are, because that situations like these, they don't define you. They don't define the young person that you are. Every single experience and journey that you have in music is truly a journey and a process, that we have to understand that will come to pass, and it's always a learning experience. So it's uh I often have many mentors and mentees in Voices of Singapore, and what we do, what I always tell them is that it's really not about the number of breaths you took, but the moments that took your breath away on stage, when you are having a conversation with somebody that you respect, when you are when you look when you walk backstage after a great concert and you say, this is really what I live for. it's really those moments that you want to remember, and those moments will be the moments that guide you to become a more gracious person, a more enthusiastic, excitable, and passionate musician.
Thank you for sharing these really inspiring words. We have so many quotes today, Reese.
Thank
Um,
you.
Going back to your compositions, you mentioned about the time it took for Echoes of the Lost World to be created. How do you deal with writer's block when you're composing?
Hmm, good question. I just stopped writing. Usually when I have writer's block, I just, I don't, uh, I just stop writing and I say, okay, I'll come back to it tomorrow, and sometimes when you have writer's block, for me at least, it's usually due to a really close deadline or stress, or it's just that you're just not in that mood, and it's for writing, the creative process. I personally find that you really can't force it. You can't tell yourself that I'm going to write something great now. If it happens, it happens. But what I do is I do go for a massage. I do go for a walk. I just go for I do something that clears my mind and gives me a moment of just peace and calm. And with the many things that are going on in my life, it's very difficult to actually find a block of time that I can just be alone in silence. Um, so yeah, that those are the moments that I give myself when I am having writer's block. And it happens all the time, and sometimes it's more frustrating than other times, but it's a process, and it's an acceptance that you will have these moments, and how you deal with them is always looking at the positive side of treating yourself better and giving yourself time to write.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a while for things to cook.
Yeah, it does.
And also, life is a great teacher, and going outside and reminding yourself that, I bet is very, very helpful. So we have one
Yeah.
last question for you today, and I think this question will make you think back uh, to a time when you first conducted a concert. And I want you to think about who was your mentor, what was the piece that you were conducting, and how did you feel?
Yeah. Wow. I don't remember my first concert. Well, I can tell you my first so one of the very memorable concerts that I did when I was a student at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. Mm, so I had two teachers, Neil Ferris, who is the conductor of the BBC Symphony, and Sarah Tennant Flowers, one of the founders of the Associations of British Conductors, and uh, they taught me so much. I conducted a recital of works. It was something like As Torrents in Summer, and then we had some uh Stroop, I think it was Amor di mi Alma, and we had like a Aguirre's Salmo 150 or something like that. Yeah. And a whole series of other works which I can't remember today. And I think that moment, that was my graduation concert, and we had voice major singing in the concert, as well as choral conductors, and I think that moment when I got off stage, I was just so grateful that I felt like I made a difference in the music making on stage, and that this whole process um, of guidance made me not just a better conductor, but a better communicator. Because ultimately, our job as conductors is to serve the music. It's not really to lead, is to be servants and guides of how we craft the music making in that moment with the choir. And I just was so grateful for that moment because I felt completely one with the ensemble. Um, And that memory stuck with me for since, and it's been one of the very defining moments of my career and my growth as a conductor. And yeah, I'm forever grateful to Neil Ferris and Sarah Tenenflowers for that moment.
Yeah, I think that it's been demonstrated in the last 30 minutes, your servant leadership. And so thank you so much for offering advice and taking us into your world. And I am walking away feeling inspired, and I'm sure that Anne would agree.
Yes. We're so thankful that you made time for us and that we have a little slot in your timetable. So thank you
Thank you.
for being our guest today. And
Yeah,
I'm sure the
thank you so
listeners
much.
enjoyed
Thank
too.
you, and thank you, Reese. It's really inspiring the work that you are doing, and I hope that you do more. And I hope that your work continues to radiate throughout the choral scene in not just IFCM but in the world. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much, and thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining. We did it.
You
Yay!
did it
Take care,
in your
guys.
timetable.
Thanks so much. Lots of love, lots of love. We'll catch up again.
That was Unison, brought to you by the Young Committee of the International Federation for Choral Music. If you have any feedback or ideas for the podcast, you can email us at young@ifcm.net. Thank you to our guest for their time, and thank you to you for listening.